Good evening, Fireside. 7:39. There are a couple people around. I'm hoping. It is Crash Test Dummy. Roads. Where we're going, we're not going to need roads. What does that mean? That means I'm a bit of a movie fan. I also happen to live right near a very, very, very major intersection. I'm going to look around right here. Slowly, you'll be able to see. Behind me, you're going to see some snow plows, some things moving up and down. But what do I mean? I am the Crash Test Dummy, and I'm in the safety world. We are the original Crash Test Dummies. We spend our days trying to keep people safe. What I mean is, Doc Brown talks to Marty McFly an awful lot. Marty McFly breaks things, has accidents, and looks to Doc. He says, Doc, what are we going to do? So the question then for a Crash Test Dummy is, what would Marty do? So, as Doc said, where we're going, we're not going to need roads. Behind me there is a railway. It runs across the country. It moves stuff from A to B, a lot of stuff. And it is a very major thoroughfare that can actually be interrupted pretty well at any point with a major bonfire, for lack of a better term, because it has been proven in the past, not that long ago, where there was actually a rail line that was actually hazardous to, well, there's somebody coming right now, that was actually hazardous to the world because in the eastern part of our country, it is a major supply chain to where the world is going to be, the eastern part of this country is where getting their food. So anything that comes in and out of this country will go along the railway. Right up there north. Behind me here is the St. Lawrence River. So Doc doesn't need a road there either, because that's a major port running from basically the northern part of New York State, southern part of Canada, all the way into Toronto. It's a major seaport that will be running east to west. So that is another reason why Doc doesn't need roads, because there's a major thoroughfare of water. So what happens if that supply chain is disrupted? Well, why don't we ask Marty? Throw a couple Crash Test Dummies in there. We should talk about what do they do. Well, we can't get up to 1.21 gigawatts. I don't think that would work anymore for time travel. We could also look at electrical transportation on the rail line. Everyone's talking about electrical right now. What do we do about that? Well, with electrical, you have to have a generating station. So what do you do with a generating station? Very simply, you still have to transport the electrical from one area to the other area. Not that difficult to comprehend, but at the same time, quite cool. There, so, very quickly, what would Marty do? Transitioning from one area to the other area. So, we are looking at, excuse me everybody, if you're actually watching by video, it is about minus 20 outside, and it's an awful lot warmer right here. So, we're looking at major supply chains east to west, which basically supplies eastern part of North America through major cities. It'll run through New York all the way to Toronto in the eastern part of the continent. So, for the safety world, we have to concern about is what happens when there's a crash? What happens if something breaks down? What if there's an accident on site? So we've talked an awful lot about the hard stuff, people wearing safety harnesses, that type of idea. Speaking of safety harnesses, let's talk about that. On the rail line, people have to worry about their safety. Now, there's a great scene in Back to the Future where Marty is actually hung by a rope around the neck. And of course, we think about that point, what would Marty do? Well, he was hung. In the actual movie, there was actually an accident where he was actually almost physically hung, and he almost died on set because, well, he was acting, but not acting that well. They didn't know the fact that he was actually hanging and running out of breath. So what would Marty do? Well, Marty almost died. That's a workplace accident waiting to happen. That shouldn't happen because there's actually safety people on set that actually have to worry about that type of idea. They do fantastic work, but at the same time, it's also a very dangerous position. So that's something to worry about when you're talking movie sets. So I'm gonna make sure my light's going off here. There we are. Excuse me, everybody. So that's something to worry about on set. So where are we going with that? Roads. Where we're going, we don't need roads. The rail line. Marty was basically stuck in the rail line. He was trying to pull himself out of it. It was only when the safety person on set noticed that he was actually quite injured and was losing his breath and had to get pulled to safety. So what happens? The insurance company comes on board and there's a review, and a lot of that type of idea happens. So every time someone gets hurt, which is more often than you know, then you have to worry a little bit about the safety board. Excuse me while I take a sip of water. So going down that same line of thinking of roads, we're going, we don't need roads. Okay, so we've rescued Marty from the rail line. What else happens in the movie? Well, does anybody else remember the hoverboard scene? In the hoverboard scene, there's basically a great big chase where they're chasing Marty. He's pulled himself along on the skateboard. We have that all taken care of, so the roads are taken care of. But I was looking down the waterway, so there's that big seaway, the waterway. What happened when they got to the water scene? Well, the hoverboard died. Remember, Biff said, power, you need power to run on water. So we talked about that. Throughout the supply chain, you need water. So that great big huge scene where the hoverboard happens and Biff comes up with a great big bat because he has power and Marty doesn't have power because he's stuck with the hoverboard that doesn't work on water. So what happens? He takes a swing and he misses and he spins around and he goes right through the clock tower. If anybody remembers that scene, he goes right through the window. What actually happened on site is there's a stunt woman by the name of Cheryl Wheeler was injured on set. What had happened was the harness she was wearing, the safety harness, same what thing that happened with Marty McFly, Michael J. Fox, didn't release properly. It's actually in the movie. And she fell 25 feet. You see in the movie, she bam, 25 feet. She hit the ground. She actually sued the studio. Her name was Cheryl Wheeler. She was actually a stunt woman, and the safety harness was improperly functioning. These things happen. We know things happen in workplace scenarios. This happens in the film world too, good and bad, and horrific things do happen. It just happens to be in the news an awful lot more lately with what happened on the set with Alec Baldwin. Horrific accidents. Things do happen. There are an awful lot of people that try and make sure they don't happen, but at the same time, it's something to think about for insurance. I looked at the rate for insurance. I'm not an insurance expert at all, believe me. What I did look up was I think the cost is between $300 and $600 per $1 million of liability for a movie set for workplace injuries. Relative to scale, I don't think that's an awful lot, but at the same time, when everything gets insured, it can get lost in the shuffle. So make sure that you have enough workplace safety people on set, on site, just around. And the best safety person is the people actually working on site because these people are excellent experts, but they can only look at so many things. So as long as you have a safe workplace environment, teach everybody to be safe on set, it creates a more safe and fulfilled environment. People feel safer, people feel healthier, people feel, well, basically safe and warm. They get into their cocoons, they get into their caves, it's their safe place. So as long as people don't feel they're going to get hurt, they'll perform better. If you think about that, make sure they can perform better, make sure they feel safe. That's something to think about for the $300 to $600 that it costs for $1 million in liability. Make sure you have pros there. Make sure you have a safe workplace around you. Because going back to last week when I was talking about Brad Pitt who severed his tendons when he was just jumping out of the car and cut his hand. If someone just said, well, maybe you should double check that to make sure it's safe. Make sure everybody around knows that they're taken care of. Double check the safety harnesses. Even though there are pros there, the people that see them working all the time, just make them look twice. Put pictures of people up everywhere you can to make people look twice. It's not just a regular safety program. Just remind people that these are dangerous things you're playing with. You're making a fantastic movie, but all these little things, people get physically hurt. The green screen has been fantastic in keeping that down, but the reality is people still get hurt. What else are we looking at? Yes, another one we have to think about too is going back to the road. We dealt with the rail with what would Marty do with the rail line. Okay, we had to get out of the safety harness. As well with the hovercraft in the water, he was still worried about the safety harness. But what if you're behind the wheel and you think you're safe, but the person in charge isn't better trained than you are? Great case is the Kill Bill movies. This isn't settled, I don't believe, so I'm just offering opinions and that type of idea. But whatever the chase scene was with Uma Thurman in the car scene, there was actually being filmed from behind. And there was actually where she hit the tree, she would actually hurt her neck. You can see the replays on that. And she actually had some neck pain and was treated for that. I don't know how far it went. Please look into that. I'm not sure. But again, it's just a matter of as you get older, you start having aches and pains and things you can think about. Well, maybe I should have just checked into that, or maybe I should have just double checked to make sure I was safe. And you don't want to stop what's going on. Workplace has to happen. Work has to happen, but you don't want it to get in the way of what you're doing. You also want to make sure that effective performers can do their job safely and not get hurt. And like any worker or performer, they deserve to get home safely and soundly at the same time. So that's kind of what we talk about for 15 to 22 minutes every Monday night. I'm a big movie fan. I'm a big TV fan. That's why I chose 22 minutes originally, because I was based on that TV show I liked, and it turned into 15 minutes because that's big OSHA standard. Everything's about health and safety and work and play and movies as well. I just happen to be known as a big movie fan, so I chose this week to be What Would Marty Do for the Crash Test Dummy? And that's what we're talking about. What would Marty do for the Crash Test Dummy? And I think we're going to go on to our next topic next week for the Crash Test Dummy. Again, I'm going to stick with the movies, the safety in movies. We're thinking about acting versus struggling. We talked about Marty trying to convince Robert Zemeckis, I'm not that good of an actor. I was really struggling. Or in the case of Now You See Me, I'm not going to go into too much details on that, but there was a fantastic scene where the actress was worried for a little bit. So what is a fine line between acting versus struggling, and where do the safety reps step in play, and how much pressure is on them to let the show go on? That's something we always need to discuss. Once we have more people on stage, or if you want to talk about that, I like talking about that because I love talking about safety. I do it for a living. I happen to enjoy it. I've been doing that for safety and supply for close to 20 years now. I enjoy movies and music at the same time. I just happen to find some coefficients, or excuse me, some co-works between work and music, and that's safety and music and movies and all that great stuff. But I call myself the Crash Test Dummy because we are the original Crash Test Dummies. We spend our days trying to keep people safe at work, and we enjoy doing that. For everybody else, please excuse the vertical of the video, because that is how we tend to like it in Fireside. I like it that way because it profiles me a little bit better some days. Makes me look a little bit thinner in the gel, right about here. No? Yes? No? Either way, I'm Kurt. I am the Crash Test Dummy. I like to try and make sure people stay safe at work so they can go home and stay safe and play harder. That's what I like to do. Check out my bio. Check everything out. Kurt Austin Live. I am the Crash Test Dummy. I appreciate everybody that has stuck around. Thank you, and take care, everybody.